Today, we're diving into one of Europe's most deceptively dangerous dive sites, a place of stunning natural beauty that hides a deadly past beneath the surface. Tucked away in the foothills of the Alps, right along the border between Germany, Austria, and Switzerland, lies Lake Constance, one of the largest freshwater lakes in Europe. But within this vast glacial basin is a formation known in German as Teufelsstich, the Devil's Table, a haunting underwater structure that has claimed the lives of multiple divers and pushed rescue teams to the brink of disaster. This is not a cave, but a rock needle, a steep, freestanding wall formation not unlike those in the Grand Canyon. Except this one is submerged entirely in icy, freshwater darkness. Wall diving like this seems safer than cave diving. There's no overhead environment, and in theory, you can ascend to the surface at any time. But Lake Constance is different. The water here is unpredictable. Massive underwater vertical waves can suddenly push or pull a diver dozens of feet. That's Lake Constance stretches over 39 miles, formed by the ancient retreat of the Rhine Glacier over 10,000 years ago. Today, it's a playground for boating, swimming, and for some, diving. But Devil's Table, located just offshore near the small town of Walhausen, is not a place for casual exploration. It begins with a shallow plateau, just 2 meters below the surface. From there, the lake floor drops away violently, a vertical underwater cliff that plunges to nearly 90 meters, or 295 feet. Not poetic language, it's a real phenomenon caused by temperature gradients and currents. Pair that with total darkness, frigid temperatures, and the psychological effect of depth, and it's easy to see how even experienced divers can become disoriented and lost. On May 7, 1977, Wolfgang and Eberhard, both 27, arrived with a dive plan that, on paper, seemed simple. Descend to the plateau, follow the vertical wall of a Devil's Table down to a moderate depth, explore for a short time, and ascend after about 30 minutes. Both were equipped with twin cylinders, enough air for 40 minutes of relaxed diving, and had informed a friend on shore of their plans. After gearing up, they descended into the shallows, reached the plateau, and swam to the wall's edge. From this point, experienced divers know that the safest strategy is to follow the vertical rock face, staying close enough to maintain orientation. The wall acts like a trail, constant, physical, and tactile, that can guide a diver back up if visibility fails or panic sets in. But Devil's Table has a dangerous illusion. When visibility is clear, divers may feel confident enough to push deeper, and if they lose sight of the wall, even for a moment, it can vanish into the darkness behind them. With no overhead environment like in a cave, divers might believe they're safe until they're not. That day, Wolfgang and Eberhard likely descended deeper than planned, without redundant lighting or navigational lines, and possibly without paying close attention to their depth. They may have slipped into the twilight zone, where ambient light fades, colors desaturate, and the water becomes a featureless black dome. If they lost visual contact with the wall, they would have been left in open water with no reference point. That kind of disorientation is deadly. If they swam away from the wall even slightly, they would find themselves in a black void with no ceiling, no floor, and no direction. Without visual bearings, their bubbles would be the only guide. But panic or urgency may have overruled careful tracking. As their breathing rate increased and gas levels dropped, the possibility of losing track of time, depth, and each other became a fatal spiral. When they didn't surface on schedule, their friend began searching. Nothing. Then police divers searched, following the wall, expanding the radius. No bodies were ever found. The theory that emerged from expert analysis was this: the pair followed the cliff too far down, possibly to 70 meters or more. They became disoriented and drifted off the wall. Running low on air, they likely attempted an ascent, but had no guide back without proper decompression. And likely too late, they drowned in deep water, their bodies drifting beyond the drop-off, where depths exceed 90 meters. With no current to move the bodies back to shore and few landmarks, their remains may have settled in the silt basin beyond the base of the Devil's Table, an area extremely difficult to search manually. To this day, Wolfgang and Eberhard have never been recovered. 2 years after the first tragedy, on July 8, 1979, Ernst, 35, and Fritz, 28, planned to dive in nearly the exact same area, Devil's Table, off the town of Walhausen. Their wives watched from a nearby boat. Like many divers who knew the region, they began by descending to the plateau and then slowly made their way along the vertical wall. This part of the dive can be breathtaking. Sheer cliffs of submerged stone, narrow ledges, deep crevices carved by millennia of glacial action. But something happened after they passed the first 30-meter mark. They began to sink. Investigators would later discover that both men were wearing over 18 pounds, 8 kilograms of lead, which was well above what was necessary, even in thick wetsuits. More critically, they had worn their weight belts beneath their BCD straps and suits, and neither had quick-release buckles. This meant that if their descent became too rapid, there was no way to drop the weight, no way to stop themselves from falling deeper. And fall they did. Divers believe that as Ernst and Fritz moved deeper, pressure compressed their wetsuits, reducing buoyancy and accelerating their descent. What may have begun as a minor overweighting mistake rapidly evolved into a runaway descent, one that could only be stopped by powerful upward swimming or by dropping ballast. With increasing depth came increased breathing effort, gas consumption, and narcotic effects, a phenomenon known as nitrogen narcosis. Thinking slows. Panic creeps in. Movement becomes sluggish. Their descent continued past 60 meters, then 80, until finally, they stopped more than 150 feet away from the wall, lying motionless at a depth of 295 feet, 90 meters, the absolute floor of the Devil's Table Trench. They likely drowned in silence, not from lack of training, but from a combination of excessive weight, improper equipment setup, uncontrolled descent, and an inability to correct course. By the time search teams recovered their bodies a week later, using underwater camera teams, the conclusion was grim and clear. They were alive for the descent, and aware they couldn't stop it. After 1979, the diving ban stayed in place for nearly a decade. Then, under pressure from diving associations, it was lifted, but with new strict permitting rules. At least 40 dives in the previous year. At least 10 dives at Lake Constance to 20 meters or deeper. A verified plan submitted for Devil's Table. Still, tragedy didn't stop. On May 10, 1991, a group of 8 certified divers went down. All surfaced, except one. His body was found floating shortly after. His dive computer showed he had gone much deeper than intended and likely blacked out during ascent. In 1993, 2 more divers died. One, a certified instructor. The less experienced diver reportedly lost consciousness. The instructor attempted a rescue. Neither made it to the surface. The Devil's Table is not a haunted place. It does not lure people in or trap them intentionally. It is simply unforgiving. In cold water and silent depth, there are no second chances, no landmarks, no warnings. The descent is easy, the return is not.